Okay, so here we are again, about to do another little section. This time around what we're going to be doing is taking a look at a simple counter script. So take it away, Logan.
Okay, well, for this counter, we're going to have a very simple table with only a single field in it just to store how many times the page has been viewed. And so I've got the MySQL monitor here. I went ahead and just logged in as the PHP user, did the password thing. So I've just logged into MySQL. So I'm going to need to select the database I'm going to be creating this table in. Remember, in the last VTM we created a BuzzDB database. So I'm going to tell it to use that database. So use BuzzDB. So now I'm inside it, and I'm going to create that simple table. So create table, spell create correctly. Create table, and we'll call it counter. We'll put one field in it, num views, and that num views is going to be a num views int unsigned. So an integer, you're never going to have a negative number of views on a page. So I'm just making an unsigned integer, and that should. Oh yeah, check this out. Yeah, I logged in as the PHP user, and I don't have permission to actually create a table.
That's right.
So let me exit out, and just log in with the default version. And as you can see, even though one thing that's cool about the MySQL monitor is even though I exited and then re-entered it, just by pressing the up arrow a few times, I could go and scroll through the backlog of stuff I've typed. So I can go ahead and I've already typed that, so I don't have to type it again. And I forgot this. Yeah. Okay. In order, use the correct database. Second, create the table. There we go. Oh, query OK. 0 rows affected, and there's no view rows in it yet. So verify that it's there. Let's do a show tables, and there we go. There's that original guess that we had. We're not going to be using that. That was just something we played around with in the first VTM. But there's our counter table, and we can use describe table counter to see how counter is made up. And ds describe table. Don't have to just describe counter. Describe is only used on tables. So we can see that we have a single field. Its type is an integer, and its default's null. So basically just a place to store numbers. Now we need to actually basically initialize this ourselves, as in we need to have a record, because this counter script is going to be working off of a single record, the first and only record in this table. So I'm going to have to go ahead and add that default record. So I'm going to use insert into. And notice I'm using insert and like the MySQL commands in all caps. You don't have to do that. I'm just doing it to make it easier to tell the difference, because normally when I name tables, I use lowercase and underscore. So you can easily see the contrast between like commands and what your actual tables and fields are. Insert into counter values, and we only have one value to put in that, and that would be num views. We're going to make that 0. So insert into counter. Now we can see that that's been added by doing a select. Again, select is how you retrieve data from a table. Select star from counter, and we see we have num views 0. So with that, we've got the table ready to go. So I'm just going to minimize MySQL here. All right. Now we need to actually load up. Let me bring context back, and we're going to. I can leave those open just for reference. But all right, so we know how to establish a connection, but now we need an actual script to not only establish a connection, but then actually use it. Now, since I've already typed these 2 lines out, basically bringing in those variables to use in the database and then actually establishing the connection, I'm going to grab those out real quick and just copy them, because we're going to be using these exact lines in all scripts that use the database. So I'll start a new file, start a PHP tag, and paste those in. So I'll go ahead and set the highlighter to PHP. There, so now I've got establishing a connection to the database. So if this runs properly, I do have a connection. But there's one more thing, one last thing that PHP is going to need before it can actually work with data in a database. We need to tell what database to use. Basically the same thing as when we say use BuzzDB. We have to do that here. And remember, we had that 4th variable the name of the database we're going to be using. So we already have that there. We just need to actually put it into action. Now, this is another one of PHP's built-in MySQL functions. It's MySQL select DB. This takes in what database you're going to be using, in this case $DB name, which holds BuzzDB, comma, and this is where we need to refer back to what connection we made. We need to have a connection before we can select a database with that. So we're going to do $connection. So there, now we're telling MySQL to use the BuzzDB database. So we've got that established. Now we can actually run a query or actually run a select statement inside of PHP. And in order to do that, I'm going to set this up a little bit differently. There's use a MySQL underscore query function in order to run the query. But I'm first going to have the query stored in a variable. This is I'll show you why this is useful in just a second. So $query equals select star from C counter. And it will accept the terminator here, but you don't have to because you're just running this one line. It doesn't require a terminator inside of your SQL statement. It obviously does after the PHP line runs. So we've got the query stored. Now we're going to run the function, but this is another function we'll need to store its output from. We're going to run a MySQL query function inside of PHP, and that's going to return back everything that the MySQL monitor would normally just print on the screen. So we're going to need to have another variable to store this. So we're going to do $result, which is what will store the result of the query we run, equals MySQL underscore query. And query takes in a query and what connection to use. So in this case, the query we've already got stored in this variable. So $query, comma, $. It's time to learn typing and talking. CON. So $connection. So that will actually run. That will run the query. Now, remember back when we did the MySQL connect, we gave it an or do something else if it can't run the connect. That's what I'm going to do here. A MySQL query wouldn't actually return stuff if it didn't work. And even if it did, we might want to know, like, remember when I typed invalid stuff in the MySQL monitor, it would give the exact like SQL error, or MySQL would return an error. If we wanted to see that when inside of PHP, there's actually another function available to show that. So let me go ahead and add this in here, or die, again like before, but instead of adding just a string, I'm going to actually add the output of a different MySQL function. It's MySQL underscore error. And then make sure you put 2 more parentheses because this is a function, but you're not passing any arguments to it. Now, this wouldn't have to be done like this. We could put this on a separate line or not even die. We could just echo the MySQL error and keep going. But in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and stop the script if there's an error because the rest of the script isn't going to work if this part doesn't. So it's going to try to run that query, that select star from counter, and if it can't, it's going to stop the script, exit, and tell you what the MySQL error was. So if this runs correctly, then we'll have the results of this query stored inside result. We need one last function in order to actually process that data that's been returned. And we're going to store that because now we have like an array or well, not even an array. It's different the way it stores the data type. But we need to be able to get just that one numViews field into a single variable. So I'll go ahead and create that variable, views, which is how we'll refer to that number we had in the database when we're working inside of PHP, equals MySQL result. So here we have another a built-in function of PHP to access MySQL. A MySQL result takes in the first argument is the result from a query. That's why we did $result equals this. You actually, let me type this out first and explain it. So $result. Then, if we had multiple results, like you saw in the last view team, we added several records to, or I think we added, well, you can have multiple records in a table, obviously. And if this select returned multiple records, you'd have to be able to tell it which record you want, like starting at 0 and then going up, which record do you want to work with. In this case, we have only one, so it'll be 0. So we'll just assume that's the first one since we're only going to work with one record in this table. So we'll go to the first and only record, and we'll say we need to specify what field we want to look at. So we're going to be looking at num views. Views, plural. So what that'll do is the MySQL result takes in whatever this query returned. And notice I have $result here. You wouldn't actually have to do that. You could put this entire line up to here, this MySQL query, and run it here instead of storing a variable. It's just this keeps your code a little bit cleaner, and you can work with this differently and put the or die if you need to halt the script and see what the error was. But this, let me terminate that. So what this should do is now if this runs successfully, you have the result of this query stored in $result. But then MySQL result will take in that MySQL result, and it'll grab the first record, starting with 0 being the first, and it will grab the field num views. Whatever's in num views gets put in $views. So with that, we have $views, which in this case would be 0 because that's what we set it to. So what we need to do, okay, this is a counter. We have 0 views. So obviously, since this is running inside a PHP script, which is going to be used to generate a page, and that page is being viewed. So we need to increment that views. So $views was 0, views plus plus. So increment it. Now we've got a view if this was the first time that the script ran. So now,
but by the way, just letting you guys know out there, $views plus plus is the same thing as saying, here he goes. He's going to write it out for you now.
$views. I'm sure you would have rather had him explain it instead of me sit here and type.
Oh, that's okay. Plus one.
Plus one. Same thing.
Okay, same exact thing. It's just programmers get kind of lazy from time to time. Actually, just being fast and efficient, we don't like typing so much. So views plus plus is the same thing as saying views equals views plus one.
Okay, so we've got that. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and write this record back because obviously that's how it's going to work. That's the whole reason why this counter is going to require a database, is it's going to need somewhere to store that number of views. And in our case, we're using the MySQL database to store it. So I'm going to go ahead and write this updated value back to the database. So I'm going to need to start another query. Actually, let me not use the query this time because you don't always have to. This is just cool for debugging. Like if this didn't work and you were trying to figure out what was wrong with it, you could go in here and say echo the $ query. I'm not actually going to leave this in here, but if you could go and echo query to see, because like say you included variables inside this query before, like say the user has to input a number, and then it has to select that record. So that record is going to be dynamic. You need to see what's causing the error, so you can go ahead and echo out the final query and then take that apart yourself or look at it or run it or whatever. This just makes it very easy to split this whole operation up into different steps. I'm going to take that back out because we won't be using it. We'll just be looking at MySQL error if something goes wrong. So we'll do another. And at this point, yeah, I'm going to get just a little bit lazy. We're going to do almost the exact same thing. We need to start a query and we need to run it. But this time, the query is going to be update counter. So this we're taking that same record, but we're just changing what it holds. Update counter set num views equals $. Pardon typing. So we've got whatever was in the database incremented by 1. Now we're saving it back. So the query is now update the counter, set num views equals whatever our current views is. In this case, if it's the first time the script being run, this would be 1. So then we'll go ahead and run that, and here, let's see, this isn't going to return any useful data to us, so we're actually going to take the $result part out. If it runs and doesn't error, that's it. We've added the correct data. We're not going to be getting data from an update. So we'll go ahead and save that out, and then finally, we'll tell what's in $views. Actually, show the browser. So echo, and just go ahead and start a string. This page has been viewed, and then I'll leave a space. I'll end that off. I wouldn't have to use the concatenate here. You see, we use that $views. As long as you're inside a string that starts with double quotes, and you type $some variable, that variable will actually get evaluated. It would be numViews equals 1 or 10. It wouldn't be numViews equals $numViews when the script actually runs. But you can use concatenate like if you're doing like a mathematical expression or something that you need to be tacked onto the end of this. It's just a different way of doing it, or if you were using different quotes. $views. See, this is basically splitting out of it. You could do anything at this point that could be tacked onto the string, and then go back into the string and say, so it's been viewed $views times. So we've got a line that'll just basically look like a counter. This page has been showed whatever times. And with that, providing everything was typed right, that will finish this script. Now all you got to do is save it out and run it, and obviously debug it. So go ahead and save it, and we'll put this under, okay, we were under Apache last time. I need to go back all the way up to webroot and save this right in webroot. We'll call this counter.php. Save it out and load up a web browser. And 127.0.1/counter.php. And if I didn't type anything wrong, let's see. Might have typed, see that, or the browser is going funky again. Yeah, but normally when it's running on localhost, it takes no time. 27.0.0.1. Try localhost.
There it goes.
Oh wow, it did just take a lot of time.
It was just taking a long time.
Okay, but there you go. We had, wow. Okay, so we set that first record to 0, but then the script ran, and obviously the page has just been viewed. So this page has been viewed one time. Well, one time zil.
One times. Yeah. So refresh
it 2 times. Refresh, and so on. So there you've got a basic counter. It's keeping track of this database record. If we actually went back to the MySQL monitor and take a look, we hit the up arrow key once and rerun that select to see what's in counter. NumViews is 6.
So now we're actually using a browser basically to access a page that in turn accesses our database. And we're actually updating information in that database.
Yep, that's exactly it.
So this is kind of the start of it.
Yep, this is working with data inside of PHP. We're retrieving data, or working with it, adding one to it, and then saving that data or updating that record, and then finally showing that data that we got from the database.
Sweetness. I guess that's about all we need for this section then, eh?
Yep.
All right, so that concludes this lesson. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye.